Hello! Today I wanted to share with you the steps for transplanting tomatoes, and these can also apply to other types of plants that you might want to transplant. So I've got some tomatoes that I started in a little pot, and this is actually a pot that I got mushrooms in. Usually I try not to buy stuff in plastic, but this time of year I like it in these little trays, and I save them and I use them for starting my seeds. So I've started a lot of seeds. You might think, wow, I don't need that many tomato plants. But the reason why I did that is that the tomatoes that I started are all from saved seeds. So some of them were about 5 or 6 years old, and I wasn't sure how well they were going to germinate. So I went ahead and I planted a bunch and I sprinkled them around in the top here. Now they're about 2 weeks old, 2 to 3 weeks old, and they're ready to be transplanted. So I'm going to show you my technique for it, and hopefully that'll help you in growing tomatoes for your own garden. So there's a couple of different things that you can use for transplanting your seedlings once they're ready to move into a larger pot. One thing is these small, they're like a 4 to 6 ounce container. This one happens to be a Italian ice, but yogurt containers work. Those types of milk cartons that you can get, like a school size single milk carton, those also work as well. Anything else, you can always cut them down to the right size. I think this is a 6 ounce, so that's a good size. Another thing you can use is, if you want, you can go out and you can purchase an official little pots like this. This cost me $1 for 24 of the 24 little pots, and those fit nicely into a tray. I'm going to be planting some of the tomatoes into this single unit here. I wouldn't really recommend this for home use because you probably don't want this many tomatoes. I'm going to do an entire tray of the same kind of tomatoes because I'm going to be giving these away later this spring for part of our seed and plant giveaway. But what I like about this is that it's a lot deeper than the little trays that I got at the garden center. So it just gives the tomatoes a little bit more root space to grow before I have to plant it in the ground. So the next thing I want to talk about is your soil mix that you might use for transplanting. I do two different things. I might go out and buy a pre-made potting soil or seed starting mix, and that has pretty much everything you need to be able to transplant your plants. This here is a blend that I bought. It's Coast of Maine, which we have around here, and it's a seed starting mix. Many times I'll make my own mix, which would be a combination of both peat moss, compost, and then either perlite, which you see these white things in here, that's perlite, or vermiculite, which is another type of soil additive that just gives the soil a little bit better drainage and keeps the better aeration in the pots. So the next step is to take your seedlings and take them carefully out of the pot. Some people like to start their seeds all in one seed per little pot. Some people like to use jiffy pots. Either one of those works. But like I said, because I didn't know if these were going to start, because they were older seeds, I decided to sow them all together like this. So as you can see, what I'm doing here is I'm pulling these apart. I'm shaking a lot of the soil off because I want to make sure that the roots are not getting tangled up in each other. I don't want to rip these apart because then I'm going to tear off the roots and make a very unhappy plant. You need to very, very gently place them into the soil. And as you'll notice, I'm just gently pressing in here. I'm not shoving the soil down. I work with kids a lot, and that's what they always want to do, is just pack the soil down on top of the plants. But that can cause a lot of problems with drainage and the water getting through and crushing the roots and so on. So I'm just making a little hole right here, gently putting my tomato seedling in, just holding it super gently by the stem, making a hole, and then tucking it in. Now that looks like I got 2 in there, but I'm just gonna leave it because they seem like they want to be together. So after I've got my tomatoes transplanted, The most important thing to do next is to add some water. I've got this little watering can that has a spout that I really like it because it comes out super slow. I can control it a lot better than I can with a big watering can. You can use whatever you have, even a bottle. So I'm just putting a little bit in here, and you'll notice that it's running straight on through. Now, if I had packed down my soil too much, it would have been very difficult for the water to easily drain through. Want to have good drainage, make sure that your soil is not too compacted. Now, let's take a look here. See, this guy kind of fell over, so I'm gonna add a little bit of soil on top of these. Again, I'm not gonna pack it down, but that one got pushed over a little bit when I watered, so I'll just sprinkle a little bit more soil on top. Like that. A little more on top like that. And there's one more last really, really important step when you're transplanting your plants, and that is the label. If you do not label your plants, you are going to be very sorry. It's really important to make sure you have something to label your plants when you start your seeds and when you transplant. You just take anything. This is like a tongue depressor, one of those craft sticks. You can go to the garden center and you can buy an official label. You can take old yogurt containers and cut those up and make plastic labels out of them. If you just want to recycle things, all kinds of different options for putting a label in your plants. One other thing I want to just share with you is you may have noticed that when I put the tomatoes in, I planted them kind of deep. And that's something that you can do with tomatoes. You can't do that with a lot of your other transplants. You really need to plant them at the same level as the top of the soil. So just make sure that if you're planting something other than tomatoes, that you're planting it right at the soil level where it's growing. Don't bury them deep. Most other plants don't like that. Tomatoes are special. I hope that was helpful, and I hope you have a great garden this year.